Hello, everyone, and welcome to July's Talk Music webinar. We're excited to have you here tonight. I see several people joining as we speak, so I'm going to give them just a few moments here to go ahead and get logged in. We really appreciate you being a part of this. This is exciting every month to have someone. As you can see tonight, Aaron Curtis is with us, and we are so happy to have him. This is a very busy season for him, and I was excited that he could do it in July because, of course, he is doing the music this year for North American Youth Congress, which is a major deal and a major undertaking. So, Aaron, I want to say thank you for being a part of this tonight, just a few weeks away from Youth Congress. So, but I think the topic tonight is wonderful. I think it's incredible and something we all need to hear. Um, Anytime we're talking about believing in our calling and that area of ministry in our lives, I think it's really, really big. So I think this is going to be great. We are going to, of course, have this archived. So if other members of your team need to watch this or would like to see this, we'll have that available on our website, which will be great. So I'm going to get out of the way, but if any of you are new to our webinars tonight, once Aaron's done talking, I will go ahead and come back on the screen here and kind of facilitate any questions that you guys have. Go ahead and you can actually type them in as we're going, and I'll see them. I'll be the only one as the moderator that can see your questions, and then I'll call on you if you want to ask those questions and just kind of do some Q&A at the end. I think that's always good, great for music directors and musicians and singers to get to talk with one another. So anyway, without any further ado, Brother Aaron, go ahead and take it away, and I can't wait to hear you.
Well, hello everyone. I want to say really quickly, I'm thankful to be here, and I thank Jeremy Hoffey for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. And I've had something on my mind that has just really kind of been a reoccurring thing for me, and I wanted to share it with you. I'm going to start by telling you a quickly just kind of how I've kind of gotten into the kind of where I'm at right now, and I'm a little bit bivocational because I do work in music a little bit and I work in audio, but I want to share with you just kind of how I came into this kind of audio thing that I've been doing, and I know that doesn't sound like it pertains to music, but I promise it does. I used to look at sound and electronics and things like that in a very different light than I do now. I used to look at it as it was some very almost like it's just kind of this far out, idea that I really could never get my brain around. And there are a lot of things in my life that I've kind of accepted the challenge and kind of maybe had childlike faith about. But audio was one of those things that I literally couldn't get my brain around it. And I guess I started having a little bit of a breakthrough in it. I started going to college for it and studying it more, and I realized that a lot of what I had built up in my brain about it was I looked at other people and they seemed to understand things better than me, and they seemed to understand concepts and really catch on to things in a way that I never felt like I could. And when I realized it's just another discipline, it's just another amount of study, and it's just another, it was kind of a breakthrough for me. And I believe we can apply a lot of these concepts when we think about believing in our calling. Let's just assume, everybody watching tonight, we're all called to music ministry. We all have, a very specific mandate from God to do what we're doing. But maybe there's some apprehension. I've met a lot of people who maybe believe that they're called conceptually, and they've heard the voice of God, but when it comes to fulfilling that calling, we're frozen in whatever it might be that kind of paralyzes us. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's the influence, an outside voice or something in our lives that we have let influence us. But there are many factors that kind of keep us maybe from stepping over into this area of faith and that believing that you can do what God has called you to do. Because I have felt that, and I mentioned the example, I looked at line level and mic input versus line input, and decibels in full scale versus decibels in VU, and all that stuff was very foreign to me. I didn't understand, and I felt like, and I'm just gonna be honest and just kind of talk transparently for a minute. I really felt like I would see things like that, and I'm like, well, that's for other people. That's for other people who have a more propensity to understand those kinds of concepts. I really can't grasp that. But it's weird because when it comes to music, I guess I've always felt some childlike faith. And that's not to say that I've, just understood everything musically. I mean, music is a process. My friend Jared Wood says it best when he says, musical. It's not a totem pole. It's a more of an interstate. It's more of a freeway. It's more of a road. And what that means is it's not like you get to this tier and then you graduate to this tier. No, it's more like you're on the road in your car, and I felt like the road musically. I've never tried to tell myself that I couldn't do something, and so now I prove myself wrong a lot. Sometimes there are things I'm not able to accomplish at this stage, but just like being on that road, I know that if I keep working at it, I believe I can get there. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but I'm crazy enough to believe that anything is possible. But there are things in my life where I sometimes get hung up, and I'm like, God, I believe that's for somebody else to do. I believe that that's for somebody more gifted than me. And it's easy to kind of fall into that groove of just thinking, these are the things that I'm proficient at, and these are the things that I'm not. Fear, when the doctor tells you something that you don't want to hear, you need to exercise or XYZ, or you need to lose weight or XYZ. That is a big motivator. Sometimes though, fear will freeze us, and I mentioned that in the beginning. Another thing is influence in our lives. If you have an influence in your life telling you, whether it be the voice of your past, or something that would say, well, you're not good enough to do this. All of those are voices of influence. When you think back to the Garden of Eden, we think of that as a very empty place, but there are four voices in the Garden of Eden. There's the voice of Satan. There's the voice of, or the serpent rather. There's the voice of Eve, Adam, and God is the one that mattered. But at any given time, you have those voices of influence. God says, don't eat of the tree. Satan says, oh, you won't die. Eve says, here, try this. And Eve says, the woman made me do it. So, there are a lot of influential factors there. It's important that we listen to the right influences. I want to encourage you tonight. This is not any kind of brain surgery type concepts here, but I want to encourage you. If you ever feel a voice, especially when you're playing or in anything that you go to do, whether it's guitar, keys, drums, singing, if you ever hear a voice, and especially when you know that you're mandated by God, it's important that you understand what that voice is, because a lot of times Satan will say things to you, or try to say things like, you're not good enough to do this, or you're not, you don't have enough experience in this, or you're not gifted enough. There are a lot of voices of influence that we can allow. It's interesting though that we recognize it. I've never had the enemy attack me and say, you should give more to missions. He's never going to say anything positive. So it's important that you isolate those influences and really understand, when you hear a negative voice, because we see where negative voices happen in the Bible. Moses sent out spies to scope out the land of Canaan. Numbers chapter 13 talks about this. And verse 27 says, then they told him and said, we went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. So they're saying, this is good. This is really, really good. But then in verse 28, nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified. So we tend to kind of do that. I mean, we can, if we're not careful, we can, speak to ourselves in a way that says, well, I know that I'm called to do this, but I don't necessarily believe that I have the ability to do it. And it's important that we realize that God is not going to call us to do something and not give us the grace to do it. because and I love there's always the one voice that's going to just really be able to silence the rest. And I like what Caleb said. It says, Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. I'm very thankful for those types of voices in our lives, because if you whether it's a plan of action, in your music department, if it's something personally where I'm trying to get better at XYZ on the keyboard, or I'm trying to learn these amount of scales on guitar, whatever it might be, you have to have the voice of, we are well able to do this. God, I love 1 Timothy, or actually 2 Timothy 1:7, for God hath not given us the spirit of fear. When you feel a voice of influence saying, I cannot do this, I can't, I can't put these chords together, or that's for somebody else, because when we're involved in music, it's very easy, and especially we are all probably very well of the attacks that Satan would try to harm us with, because we're doing something that he wants occupied. We're occupying a role that he wants occupied, and that's very important that we understand the voice that he would try to discourage us with. But when we think of strings of chords that we're trying to connect together, rather than saying, oh well, that's for somebody else, it's very important that you understand that you are well able to do that. Look, I would think back to when I was a kid, and I'd watch people play, and I guess the approach that has always really helped me is I'm thinking that sounds impossible to do. When I hear somebody play something that's just far beyond what I can comprehend, I think, well, that seems impossible to do. But I look at the instrument, and I look at the same 10 fingers that they're using to accomplish what they're doing, and I think it's possible. It has to be. I'm not there, but I will get there. And that is important, that we understand in our lives the voice that God has given us. I want to say this. If you look at 1 Timothy 1:7, it says, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. But verse 9, if you skip down 2 verses, it says, who hath saved us and called us with an holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace. God has a purpose for all that we're doing in his kingdom. His divine purpose is to build his kingdom, and when we are able to be a part of that, it seems maybe insurmountable at times to think, well, I can't, I'm hearing what I'm supposed to do, and I feel like I can't execute on the piano or whatever it is that I'm trying to do, or I can't play this on the guitar the way I'm hearing on the record. But just know that he calls us not according to our works. He calls us because we are well able to do what he has called us to do. And it's important that we believe that. But it says purpose and grace. What I know about grace is that it's unmerited favor. And there are a lot of things that I look back over my life, and I see where I shouldn't have been able to do something, but because of his grace, he allows us to get beyond hurdles that we probably should not have been able to get through otherwise. And we can all, if we were to have a microphone and pass it around to everybody listening, we could all share experiences where it's like, I didn't think I could do this, but through God's help I was able to do that. And so I want to just kind of as we're thinking through this, I want to kind of maybe issue a little bit of a challenge here, because I've been in musical situations where I've heard this before, and people saying, I hear what I'm hearing on this record, but maybe that's for somebody else to play. I challenge you, the next time you hear that, or the next time you catch yourself saying, I can't do that, try to replace it with, I may not now, but I will. And I just want to say this too, just take about 40 days. In the next 3 months, because the spies went out to the land of Canaan for 40 days. And it took 40 days for some of them to say, we can't take the land. But it took the same 40 days for one guy to say, we are well able to take it. So I want you to take 40 days and in the next 3 months, whether it be listening to, a video per day, or a video, every couple of days, or learning a new concept every day. Take 40 days and just work through as much as you can, and the things that make you fearful, and the things that make you, that point that seems just 1% beyond where you're at, or maybe 10%, or maybe 100% beyond where you're currently at. I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to, take 40 days and just consecrate myself to new learning and new ideas, and just work through things that I feel like are beyond where I'm at, because we all have a place that we want to get to, and whatever it takes to get there. Maybe it's something that instills fear in you. Oh, this speed of playing the scale at this speed, I don't feel like I can do that. There are mechanical things that we can do, of course, to help us with that, but there are also spiritual things and spiritual principles that I've mentioned tonight, that if we replace the I can't with we are well able, if you replace the voice of doubt with the voice of God's purpose in your life, now those things become a lot more, they become more attainable, and they're not attainable through our strength and our power. It's through the power of God's strength and His purpose, and that thing working in your life, that allows us, because we know that we're called. We have to believe that He has given and is still giving us the strength and the courage and the wisdom to fulfill His calling.
I think that's amazing. There's been several questions that have come in, and I'm going to put some of them on. I'm going to unmute your mic, Sister Valerie.
Okay.
You had a question.
I was just wondering, you're talking about my calling or our calling, those of us that are here. How can we somehow motivate our team and get our team to be on board in this way? What would you suggest?
Well, used to, I want to say this the right way. Used to, I would look at, the music team and trying to build it in the almost an opposite way that I look at it now. And what I mean by that is, I would work with people on the fringe, like people I didn't feel like were really connected musically, but they were on the music team, and I would really invest a lot of time, and probably the most of my time, trying to bring them into the fold, or bring them kind of closer to the core. And recently, and this sounds a little crazy, but I've noticed that when I put more energy into the ones who are really trying to be there and do and be what they can, and really those, and we all have people who are in different levels, like my friend Jared says, the music is the road. We have some people who are way ahead and some people who are way behind on that road in our teams. And so the big thing for me is when you invest in those who are really just, they're really working towards it and really just trying to chop through and be the best musician, the best singer, whatever, you invest into those people first. And what happens is the growth that those people experience, because a lot of times, and I don't want to say too many personal examples, but I've been a part of a team where I saw a very young guy really grow, and that has motivated more people on our team to really kind of follow through, and he's almost become almost an unofficial leader in that way, because he has shown the example. And so, but spending the time with the people that you really feel like are really just trying to push forward and grow, that would be where I'd spend the most time first. And the more that you can help other people, by all means do so. But I say work from the core out instead of working from the fringe to the core. I don't know if that
Okay.
helps or not, but that really, I really feel like that in investing my time, I do that first, and because then when those people are strengthened, then they become kind of unofficial leaders, and people start looking to them. So you've almost duplicated your influence because you're trying to influence the people on your team, but then the people that you've invested in, just their sheer growth will influence and motivate and help other people grow in the process.
Yes, that does help. Thank you.
Sister Stephanie, she has a question. Let's see if she is there. Sister Stephanie, are you there?
I'm here.
Yes. Go ahead and ask your
Hello.
question to Brother Aaron.
Well, I just had a question. How do you practice with such a large group from being all over the U.S.?
Well, I'll just say in one sentence, technology is our friend. And what I mean by that is right now we have a working Dropbox that in every we have basically 5 folders set up, and those are for the 5 sessions that we're providing music for. And in each folder is a song, and in each song we have soprano, alto, and tenor vocal tracks. We have the those are practice tracks that shows, because here's the other challenge that I didn't mention before. We're all coming from different musical backgrounds, and we all might sing songs a little differently. So we have to have a way of standardizing our material to the point that, it's not, well, we sing it this way at my church and then we sing it this way at my church. We have to have a standardized version of all of this. And so, those vocal practice tracks kind of bring us all together. The other thing is, musically, we have gotten together with just the band and rehearsed through some of the arrangements. And so, because I do a little bit in audio and in music, we've done some tracks, we put together some tracks where we're bringing 2 or 3 songs together, and so I'm letting the band hear, and we of course arranged those songs in some actual rehearsal time in near Nashville, Tennessee, where we were able to get together. And so as from a arranging session, we were able to get a lot of those arrangements where we're going to connect things together. And so, but again, all of that kind of hinges on this thing that we leverage through technology, through being able to share files, and here's the way the vocals are going to be. This is the practice. This is the way it all sounds when we put it all together in rehearsal, and I've spliced a lot of that stuff together. And so really, and of course it's just time too, just spending time talking through things, and this is going to happen here, and so on and so forth. So there's a theory that King David, when he's running from Saul, learns a lot of how to defeat his enemies later in an area where he's behind enemy lines, in an area called Ziklag. And so there's a theory that he learned a lot of the techniques of the enemy when he was behind enemy lines. And so technology as we know it, the internet, audio, file streaming, all of this stuff is used for very different purposes. And so all we're trying to do is leverage that for the kingdom of God. And we can take things like, Sister Stephanie, or is this Sister Stephanie, I believe?
That's right.
Where are you from, Sister?
Right. I'm from Huntsville, Texas.
So, I'm in Tennessee, and we're having a conversation. Of course, this is a video conversation. So, had you told me 20 plus years ago that we would be able to do things like this, it's mind-boggling. We've actually with the whole team, we've Skyped several times, and we've just had conversations. Chemistry is a big important part of
even with your musicians.
Oh yeah, we Skyped with the whole team. We've actually had 20 plus people on.
Wow.
Just kind of talking through things, and I'm able to ask questions, and they're able to ask me questions, and because just face-to-face time like this is very important. And it's, I would even say on the local church level, when you can't get together for a week of band rehearsal or whatever, just taking 10 minutes and jumping on Skype and talking through song sets, and hey, what would you think if we transition this here, and so on and so forth. It's really an amazing tool to be able to use. And of course there are there are multiple platforms for this. I mentioned Skype, but there are multiple platforms that you can use just to kind of, and the whole purpose behind Skype is really just to build chemistry, because we're all coming from different places. So
Aaron, there's one more question. I wanted to let Brother Hunter Lewis, he has a question, and let me unmute his mic real quick. Hunter, are you there? You know what? I don't think he has his mic set up, so I'll just read his question for you.
Okay.
He said, he basically said, how would you organize your time in your personal practice to learn new concepts, to grow in God's full potential in your playing?
Well, that is a good question, Hunter. I would say, and it's funny because I was just having this conversation recently, practice time has to be intentional, and this is very important. I heard a coach say something recently where he said, time in and of itself is not practice. You can go into a fitness center or a gym and look busy and not really be helping yourself. A lot of times when people spend a lot of just sheer time all at once working out musically, there tends to be a propensity, if you're not intentional about your effort, there is this propensity to just reaffirm things you already know. And so that means, playing that riff that you worked on and kind of got nailed down, 2 or 3 years ago, it has to be, your practice time has to be an intentional effort. And mainly if your practice time, if you get up from, your instrument, and I happen to know Hunter Lewis is a drummer, well, if you get up from the drum set and that you've only played things that you already knew, then it's important that you understand that you're reaffirming those things, but you're not necessarily learning new things. When you're practicing, make sure that at least 60 to 70% of what you're working on it's good to sit down, warm up, work on things you already know, and say, okay, from here, where am I going? So for me on keyboard, for instance, I might just kind of get my fingers kind of warmed up playing through scales, and I do play through scales a lot. People really, I don't know that, a lot of people really value, just the building blocks. I mean, I'll sit through and play 2 hands, 2 octaves like your teacher would have told you as a kid. That stuff is so important, and I appreciate it more now than I ever have. But just in Hunter's case, the rudimentary stuff on the drums. But then take about 70% of, if you've got 30 minutes, the time constraint really doesn't even matter. If you only had 10 minutes, take 2 or 3 minutes and just kind of warm up with things you already know, and then look to the things that you don't. When I practice a song, and I'm thankful, Jeremy, I believe God really helped me with this. When I was in college, my piano teacher at MTSU told me, she said, you need to work through, when you look at a score of music, you work through the things that you find the most challenging first. And then you work out and you identify what it's going to be. This is going to be the part that I have the most trouble with. And then you look on, maybe it's page 2, system 4 near the bottom or whatever, and say that's going to be my next biggest issue. It's not as hard as the first one, but it's very difficult. And you rate the areas in the song where you're trying to break these things down, and you rate them in complexity and say, I'm going to deal with the toughest thing first. Because what happens is when we learn songs linearly, the intro is easy. A lot of times the verse is the easy part. But when we get to that bridge that's got that crazy run that keeps reoccurring, if you start your learning from that point, then the rest of the song all of a sudden becomes easier, because you've dealt with the thing that you were dreading the most. There's an author named Brian Tracy. He writes a lot of books on time management and goal setting and all of that, and he talks. He's got a book out called "Eat That Frog," and it comes from a statement that I believe Mark Twain made. He said, if the first thing in the morning you do is you wake up and you eat a big green juicy frog, you can rest assured that will be the absolute worst thing you do all day. And so I look at that musically and I say, what is the big green frog in this song? Because I want to deal with it first, because then I don't dread the song quite as bad. So, Hunter, I would just say whatever practice time you have and whatever time you allot, make sure that you're pushing yourself forward. Find the things that scare you. Honestly, the things that we tend to shy away from are the things that if we deal with them first, will add to our playing in so many ways. It will, it's like compound interest. It just really helps us push forward in so many ways. So
I like that, Aaron. That's very good. Hunter, I hope that helps and answers your question. We do have one more question, if that's okay, Brother Aaron, and then we'll wrap it up tonight. This question says, this person says, I have a huge problem with trying to figure out how to pour into myself, how to pour myself into others so that I can develop them as a musician and singer because of the different roles that I already hold. How do I figure out a way to develop others, because I've been doing this a while and I want to have a break, they say. So basically they're asking, how in the world do I figure out how to pour myself into others, and develop them?
I would just say, this is kind of a tougher thing because I don't know the dynamics of the team and the types of people that that you're trying to develop. But I would say, in the time that you have, make sure that your time is spent intentionally. In other words, identify those people that you're really trying to, especially people who can almost help you multiply yourself. Look to those people especially, and one of my mentors in life, in just life ministry and even musicality, even though he's not necessarily pushed forward as a musician like he plays, but a man named Phil DePriest, he was our pastor for many years. He's always been very good about, I understand that when I go to him for advice, I really try to watch my time, and I try to glean from him everything that I can. And this is kind of from the opposite. I'm talking more from the opposite role of what this question is, but it ties in. I'll ask him questions, and I'll try to set a time limit so that I don't really take too much of his time. But I will, if he gives me an hour, I'm going to take that hour and just make the most of it, and really ask him the questions that I really need the answers to, and really, so the people that you're trying to pour yourself into, make sure first that they understand that you're a finite individual and that you only have so much to give. There's a book that really, oh my goodness, it will be life-changing to you if you read it cover to cover. It's called Leading on Empty. It's by a pastor, ironically in the state of Hawaii, named Wayne Cordero, and he talks about life and ministry and burnout and that whole thing. But if you can pour yourself into people in a way that keeps you, kind of keeps your tank filled, and ministry in and of itself is a process of pouring yourself out. So I understand that, but pouring yourself out in a way that is not going to deplete you to the point that you have nothing else to give. One of the examples in the book is, he talks about the farmer who's selling the eggs at the little roadside stand, and the people have waited all this time to get eggs, and he runs out and he says, "I'm sorry, there's no more to give." And they said, "But we've been waiting all this time. We demand that you give us this and sell us these eggs." And he said, "There's no more eggs. There will be tomorrow. You come back tomorrow." And ministry is a lot of times like that. It's like a fruit tree. We hold out our arms and people take the things that we freely give, but there's always a winter season. There's always a time where you don't have as much to give, and there's a time for replenishing in yourself. And if you don't allow that process to work, then that can be very dangerous, honestly. So pouring into the people who can help you and sustain, when you don't have as much time to give, is very important, and not allowing people to take more than you have, because it's not that anybody is ever intentionally taking more from you than you can give, but especially when people look to you and you're their primary resource of knowledge and inspiration, that is a huge role to fill, and it's important that you understand your own limitations in doing so. So I would just say, work on, fulfilling or filling or pouring out into those who are able to help you multiply yourself first. So that, when you're in these stages of, especially if you wear many hats in ministry, and a lot of us do, where we might be music director, we might be, a Sunday school teacher on top of that or whatever, and at other things, it's important that you have people around you that, when you're not able to give as much, that they're able to kind of step in your stead. I don't know if that helps, but
that's really good. Aaron, there's been a couple of people that have asked for the name of that book and the author.
It's called Leading on Empty by Wayne Cordero. And it's available. I want to even say that there might even be an Audible book or an audio book for it now. But the book itself, honestly, you won't have, even if you're not a reader, an avid reader, you won't have trouble reading this book, because if you're in ministry, you'll be reading this thinking, my goodness, was I a case study for him? Because he really does talk. It's an amazing book, and his premise was, he allowed himself to be drained too far. Like he really poured out to where he was leading on empty for so long that it really kind of it affected him in a very negative way. So his premise in the book is, I'm telling you this so that you don't get to the point that I got to, and it was very inspiring for me to read. So
awesome. Someone just mentioned it's on Amazon. So
awesome.
Sister Valerie just asked, who is the book Eat That Frog by?
That is a time management book. Actually, he does a lot of leadership training too, and just organizational stuff. His name is Brian Tracy, and I've got probably 2 or 3 books of his now, and I'm sometimes I'll listen. Like I've got Audible, and the Audible app is very cool. So like when I'm traveling places, I can listen to Brian Tracy. He's really good in that stuff. So absolutely.
Excellent. Well, Brother Aaron, this has been incredible. I mean, this really has. We all needed to hear this. I wrote down some notes. I put in quotes. I'm well able. Well
Absolutely.
able.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take that away from this webinar tonight, that we're all well able. And I hope everyone has been encouraged tonight, because we need to hear this. We need to be encouraged. We do get into these places where we just feel the same way. We just don't feel like we can do it. And I can't is not an answer. It's not.
No, it's not. It's not an option. And I want to say this really quick. I don't think it's a coincidence that you started this hashtag Start Somewhere.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. I mean, when I listen to my playing, sometimes I got to be careful that I don't really think too negatively, because I know where I want to be, and I know it's not where I'm currently at. I have a sense of where I want to be, and I'm going to take 40 days in the next 3 months. I'm taking 40 days, and I'm just, we used to call it, wood shedding, just chopping through things, musically that I've been kind of letting build up. I listen to something, I'm like, man, I got to learn that, and then I let time go by, and it's a lot easier to let that inspiration kind of die. I'm taking 40 days, and I'm going to chop through some things that have been making me fearful. Some musical things that I've been thinking, that's crazy, how did they do it? But then I look and they have the same 10 fingers that I do. I know I can do it, it just takes time.
It takes a little bit of time. I mean, it can be very intimidating. I know that myself. It's just Absolutely. Like, wow, but I love what you said. Go to the hardest part of the song and tackle that first. The rest of it's going to be like a breeze. So
yes,
makes the whole song easy. Very good words of encouragement tonight. Thank you, Brother Aaron. We are excited and so happy to have these, and there were so many people logged on tonight. We didn't get to everybody, but we'll get you next time. Thank you, Brother Aaron, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.